And coming in at number 16 from the Western Hockey League, it's Brayden Yager.
This kid is a sniper. Oh man, the shot on this guy is absolutely lethal. And all you need to do is watch a couple highlights of this center from the Moose Jaw Warriors, and you can see it. I mean, he especially popped off in the playoffs, Ross, with 16 points in 10 playoff games. During the regular season, 67 games, 28 goals, and 50 assists, good for 78 points. He's the assistant captain of the Moose Jaw Warriors and was the third overall pick in the WHL draft back in the day.
And that put a ton of expectations on him to be that same dominant player the moment he stepped into junior, and he lived up to it last year, playing super well as a 16-year-old, being able to score 34 goals and almost play at a point per game pace. Had a decent playoffs as well, 10 games, 7 points. But this year, at the start of the Ivan Hlinka, he looked great. He was flying around, right? Had 9 points in 5 games, wore an A for Team Canada, and scouts thought this is a surefire top 10 pick. He could challenge into the, 6, 7, 8 range. But then the season started and it just felt like there wasn't that domination. It felt like he was, I don't want to say a passenger at times, but a guy who relied on his natural skill, that shooting ability, to do a lot of the work. Whereas scouts just kind of left there, and this is all just from reading, that they left sometimes like, oh, I kind of wish Brayden Yager did just a little bit more today.
Yeah, and that's fair, Ross. As you mentioned, this is his third season in the WHL. I mean, his first one was only 24 games, COVID stuff, so that's not really a full season. But in 4 more games this year, he scored 6 less goals, which for a guy who has a shot like this and you're entering, like usually that third year of junior is when you really pop off, right? And to score less goals in more games, that's a bit concerning for me.
Yeah, it is. Now does 16 points in the playoffs make up for it a little bit, even though there are a couple, not to take away when you do this, because it is also impressive, but a few of those were 3-point games where it's just like you have 2 3-point games and a 2-point game. That leaves a few where you weren't on the score sheet.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I think, Brayden Yager for me, Ross, is kind of a poor man's Colby Barlow. I think they have similar traits, but Colby Barlow, a little more aggressive and has some other skills just in his other than just his lethal shot. Now, that's not to say Yager is just a lethal shot and that's it. He did get 50 assists in 67 games, so he's able to kind of use that threat of a big shot to open up and make space for his teammates, which he does very well, obviously. But I don't know. If you're comparing the two, Barlow and Yager, I'm taking Barlow every day of the week, personally.
Definitely. At least the scouts almost seem like their consensus on this one when you have the highest on our list at Chris Peters at 14, Scott Wheeler at 15, Corey Pronman at 16, the average at 17, Craig Button at 18, and then elite prospects at 22, right? You're almost looking at consecutive numbers all the way up through the middle to high teens. So I think that there's a pretty fair range that we're going to see him in. And I'm excited to see what he does next year, because I think that a big summer of training, he's the type of guy where even though this was maybe a half a step back in terms of the trajectory you want to see from a top 15 lottery type player, I do still think that there is a huge long road ahead and a high probability that with the tools he has, that he can be an elite prospect as soon as next year's World Juniors. We could see him challenging for a spot in that situation.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. And the thing with when everybody's rankings are so close, Ross, that tells me that your one defining attribute, when it's all agreed upon like that, it's interesting because then it's not like someone's overhyping it or someone is devaluing it. It's just like everybody kind of knows that this is your thing, and that's that, which I'm not saying is a good or a bad thing. It's just interesting where some of the other guys, their one defining attribute either skyrocketed them up rankings, or other people were like, well, he's kind of one-dimensional, right? So it's interesting to see how he's been ranked throughout our consensus here.
He's a very disciplined player as well. Only 14 penalties minutes this year. So that's only 7 minor penalties in 67 games and 1 minor penalty in 10 playoff games. So he's a guy that doesn't put you down and can play on special teams. I think you're going to see him kind of being in that role, at least at junior next year, really kind of taking the reins with that. And he needs to be the same type of leader that they needed out of Nate Danielson with the Brandon Wheat Kings, right? Like Yager Furcus is going to be moving on. He had 88 points, 10 more than Yager at tops on his team. And they've got some other guys graduating as well. So I think that it's going to be a really important season next for Brayden Yager rather. And it's how does he respond? So I'm excited to see his development. And if you're a team that you're watching this right after your team took him, like, that's a nice little swing. I think that there's a lot of upside here. It just, you have to get him in the right development system and allow him to gain his confidence playing with his strengths.
Yeah, I think too, the thing is, like, he's one of those guys with a lethal shot that doesn't put a lot of effort on defense. And that could come back to bite him as he gets to the pros. And Ross, this is a guy I anticipate as he gets to higher competition levels will be moved to the wing.
Yes, I think that going to the wing would be the smarter move. And it's just, the advanced stats probably don't love him that much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
And you see that. So what type of team could go after him? I'm curious to see myself, because I think we could see him slip into the 20s a little bit, but not far from there. I think you're going to look from like 20 to 23 is probably where you'd look. So like a Minnesota, Columbus, who's already going to have picked at that point, or even the New York Rangers there. So it'll be interesting to see, but we know that he comes in at number 16 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings.